Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we have a green day in the cryptocurrency market, mixed day over here in the stock market. But as for cryptos, the whole board is green today. After last week's ending of a breakthrough of the 20,700 level, now kind of just waddling down here, then suddenly this morning, really just in like the last hour or two, starting to pop its way up a little bit. But this is all short-term price action. What's the story on the big-term price action? And I've been looking at things, as you guys know, I've built the case on the things that I think show the most confluence for a bottom already being in. I did find one more that shows more confluence of the bottom being in, so I'll present that today as well. It's actually been a really busy morning for me this morning, and I'm probably going to cut this video short. As you guys know, I got a fish tank like a month ago. I've been dealing with like an algae bloom going on in it, so it's a little cloudy. But I was in the back kind of working on the filter, and I noticed a little fry swimming back there, or a baby fish. So one of my fish are giving birth right now, and that's what's been going on this morning. And it's been hectic, and I got to get back to that and figure out which one is it to try to get them separated between tanks and all that stuff. So it's a fun morning for me because one of our fish are giving birth right now. But enough of that. With the break of 20,700, for me, it reduces my thoughts on that we're having some type of move that's just going to come up and flip its way back over. To each their own, and whether or not they think that's good or that's bad. For me, that was like an ultimate bearish scenario. It would mean like multi-years of bearishness for Bitcoin. However, what has happened here is setting up for more like Wyckoff accumulation happening, and these things can draw out for a while before finally getting their way up. And for the long term, that's better. But for the short term, not the most exciting price action. But I'll show you some cool stuff going on in the bigger picture of it all that I was looking at. As we know, we've looked at this just a ridiculous amount to show how this ending phase of what has happened here in Bitcoin has been very similar to ending phases, along with the peak of the market occurring back on April 14th, the day that Coinbase IPO'd. Then we've just worked our way all the way down. Now, whether or not this is more of a consolidated Wyckoff accumulation happening down in here, the interesting thing about the price level that it's pulled back to currently at this time is that it's pulled back to the previous all-time high over here on the market cap, and it's pulled back down to the 786 Fibonacci retracement level in here, pinpoint nailing it. Both of these things showing confluence in here, along with on the weekly time frame, looking back to the bottom of each of the previous bear markets. By the time we got into oversold conditions, that was the bottom. We did that, along with the fear and greed index when we were in these massive levels of extreme fear down here, 6, 7, 8, 9. The previous times that we've done that, by the time we were able to pop out of there, the bottom had already been marked to be in, including back here in the C19 sell-off and back over here at the capitulation phase of the end of the bear market for Bitcoin back in 2018. Now that's 5 different reasons to give hope for that the bottom of Bitcoin is already in. You have capitulation fractals that have already played out, previous all-time high, a 786 Fibonacci retracement level, weekly oversold conditions, and sentiment. But if we also go back through these previous cycles as well, there's something interesting that happens in here, and that's when the 50-week crosses through the 100-week moving average in here. And if we look back to both times that this happened back in 2015, and if we look to back to 2019, by the time that had happened, the bottom had already been in for several weeks at that point. In 2014, the bottom had already been in for 14 weeks. And back in 2018 and 19, the bottom had already been in for 11 weeks. By the time the 50-week and the 100-week crossed each other with their moving averages. Well, what's approaching here pretty soon is that we are about to now have the 50-week cross the 100-week. And if that were to happen, that would occur either this week or next week. We'll give it next week to say right there. And how much time would that be between those two crossing? Gives you 11 weeks. Is that within the time slots of what we've seen before? It absolutely is. Now remember, by the time this had happened in both previous major downtrends, the bottom had already come in several weeks earlier. We were just ranging at the lows at this point by the time that cross happened. And that seems to be the case of where we're at happening right now. Now, we can look back to what happened in both of those circumstances afterwards, is once that cross took place, it took 11 more weeks for Bitcoin to be able to go back and hit the 100-week moving average afterwards. And in 2019, it took a similar amount of time to really get back up here. Really, it's like it popped up here after 6 weeks, but then ranged there for another 5, and then finally got through it after 10. So the conditions we have happening in the market are very similar to that of what happens at bottoms, with fear and greed, with moving average crosses, with oversold weekly conditions. And then we also have the interesting price level of the previous all-time high and the 786 Fibonacci retracement. Those two, the previous all-time high along with the Fibonacci retracement, are not confluences of what has happened in the past. Those are merely just interesting price levels from what they represent on the chart. But the confluence of the past would be the moving averages crossing themselves, the weekly oversold conditions, and the fear and greed, along with the fractals of price behavior. So you have 4 things that are confluence to the past, and then you have 2 things that are just interesting price levels on the chart, and that would be the previous all-time high and the 786 Fibonacci retracement. The thing that is different from previous bottoms is what the Bitcoin dominance is doing. During each previous bear market for Bitcoin, the Bitcoin dominance had already been rising a lot at that point. Even if you think there's a new low coming in, or if you think that the bottom is coming in, the behavior of the Bitcoin dominance is quite different than what we've seen in the past. So it begs the question on, if we go into recovery and all that stuff, whether or not that the recovery for the next 4 years is a new all-time high, or if it is a retracement. But it does seem like some type of story is getting told here in the Bitcoin dominance that we'll be revisiting in the coming weeks based on how Bitcoin performs, right? As long as Bitcoin is still holding these price areas, and if the Bitcoin price eventually starts working its way back up, I think a story on whether or not, is there diminishing returns in this market, right? Bitcoin's previous bull run, the one from 2017, it went up 1,600% prior than the previous all-time high. The 2020-2021 bull run only went up 237% prior, higher than the previous all-time high. So is there a diminishing returns thing happening here on Bitcoin? And while we are making a structural setup of what it looks like when a bottom comes in, is the next, quote, bull run for Bitcoin not going to go as high as, we would hope, or people would hope, due to diminishing returns? And is that one of the reasons why we're seeing the Bitcoin dominance act differently during this bearish period compared to what we've seen historically? And so I think it's going to be something we revisit. And, while we're going through this consolidation, Bitcoin turns its way back up, I think an interesting story is going to get told by the Bitcoin dominance on whether or not Bitcoin can set a new all-time high, or if it's going into a retracement. So we'll revisit that as time comes. And I just don't want to get into that in this video. But this is something interesting that's behaving differently than what has happened in previous traditional bear markets for Bitcoin, with the dominance still being so low. Typically, in a real bear market for Bitcoin, this dominance is moving way up. Even in the event of those thinking that we should be going lower than here, that is something that should already be happening, is that the Bitcoin dominance should already be moving its way up, and Bitcoin should be swallowing this back up for a safety trade. But it's not, and that's quite interesting. So we'll get into that another day. But I did want to point that out, that we are seeing something different in Bitcoin's dominance compared to what happens at traditional bottoms and in traditional bears. So we'll keep this video short because it's already getting late and I haven't exported this thing yet. I should have had this video out hours ago. But one thing with all the different things that we're seeing in here is that, this level should hold based on what we've seen. What happens if it doesn't hold? You know what's going to happen. Blockchain backer, you said that was the bottom. The thing is, all these things are what happens when bottoms come in. Whenever we have that weekly cross happen on the 50-week and the 100-week moving averages, that has signaled the bottom. When we have the fear and greed index bounce out of absolute extreme fear, that has signaled the bottom. When we have the weekly RSI go into oversold conditions, that has signaled the bottom. And the capitulation fractals that we've studied have signaled the bottom. We also have the 786 Fibonacci retracement and the previous all-time high over here on the market cap. Those are not things that have happened in the past. Those are just confluence things that are happening while all those other confluence things are happening from the past. If we broke through them, holy moly, We are now deviating away from what we've seen happen in this market before. Everybody's welcome to make their own guesses on what they think is going to happen in this market. But when I show you all these things, I try to give justifications and reasonings for why. If we break through them all, then you know what just happened. We've deviated away from fractals. We've broken through the Fibonacci retracements. We've broken through the all-time highs. Unlike any time in the past where we went into oversold weekly RSI to mark the bottom, or when we went into extreme fear on the fear and greed index, or when the 50-week crossed the 100-week, or capitulation fractals. We have deviated away from everything. Is that possible? Of course, anything's possible in these markets. We saw what happened with Luna and UST. Anything's possible. But for those who are looking for new lows, those are the things that you're wanting to happen. You're wanting all those different things to deviate away. And while anything is possible to occur, I have to make my best educated guess. My best educated guess is based on those 6 different things that we see there for Bitcoin. But in each of those circumstances where it happened, where we got the 50-week crossing the 100-week, we still had to spend some time hovering down here for quite a while. In 2015, we went back to it, then got rejected by it, and then had to break through it. In 2018 and 2019, we got back to it, and we broke right through it. We're not ready to start talking about that if we get our way back up there. The mere point of this is to say, there's number 6. There's your 6th reason or 6th confluence for marking the bottom of Bitcoin. And, right now, obviously, we have a lot of fear out there in the market because we've seen what the stock market did last week. We've seen what's happened in the cryptocurrency market over the last several days. So everybody's screaming for new lows. But again, you can look back to the past and you can see what happens when those bottoms come in and what happens with the price action of them as the bottom is in, is that they can spend time down there. So it's more optimistic for Bitcoin long term. But definitely from the short-term perspective, for those who are hoping for like a pop back up to the upside, make a quick exit, then let the market just crumble into pieces, that scenario seems less likely now. And it seems more likely of healthier consolidation happening in here. The drawback to that, of course, is time, and everybody values their time more. But there's number 6 to mark that the bottom is already in. But all right, guys, I'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. I actually deleted 15 minutes out of this video. I had a big, long thing in here about Bitcoin dominance, and it just convoluted the whole video that it got so complicated, I ended up deleting it out, and we just kind of stuck with kind of the simple format here. I think these fish over here have me way too distracted for a Monday morning. I did not expect that. I don't know why I started messing with that fish tank first thing in the morning when I got home from working out, but I did, and then I noticed that little fish swimming in the back there, and it just threw off my whole morning. So either way, there you go. There's number 6. I'm going to wrap this thing up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.